Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 7:06 on this Friday morning. Thanks for joining us here on O'Connor and Company, getting your day started the right way. Everything you need to know to launch into your early weekend here. And hopefully with a smile on your face, too, as we ease into this holiday season. The last Friday before Thanksgiving. We've made it. Coming up in half an hour, 7:35, Phil Wegmann of RealClearPolitics. 8:15, Julie Donaldson on what should be a Commanders' victory against the Giants, but let's not count our chickens. We've been down this road before. 8:35, Brett Baer, Fox News Channel. That's Patrice Onwuka, and I'm Larry O'Connor. Hey,
Happy
Patrice.
Friday, Larry.
Amen to that.
Yes.
Joining us right now, one of our faves, Adam Kredo. He writes at the Washington Free Beacon, the award-winning Washington Free Beacon.
Yes.
You know, we had the Dow Awards. National Journalism Center has launched the Dow Awards under Young America's Foundation. I sit on their board, and we've got an alternative to the Pulitzer Prize.
Oh, that's
going
awesome.
to, really independent, great investigative journalism. We gave away 3 awards 2 weeks ago. The top prize went to Matt Taibbi and the team that brought you the Twitter Files story. But second place and third place both went to exposés by the Washington Free Beacon.
Oh, wow.
They're
Terrific.
really kicking butt over there. And Adam Kredo covers national security issues specific to the Middle East, and he joins us now. There, Adam, I did tell everyone at the Free Beacon I blew all your horns there. Congratulations.
I certainly will. Thank you.
So listen, let's start with this announcement that the Biden administration, in the wake of the October 7th terror attacks, and with the absolute knowledge that the fungible money that has already been made available to Iran contributes to Hamas and Hezbollah terror attacks against our allies and against Americans, by the way. There are still 9 Americans being held hostage, not to mention the Americans who were slaughtered on October 7th. But they have still gone out of their way to free up sanctions, allowing Iran to access upwards to, $10 billion?
Yeah, that's correct. So these are sanctions waivers, essentially, and what the administration has been doing is issuing them about every 4 months, and it allows Iraq to pay Iran for electricity purchases without facing sanctions. There's about $10 billion that's been held in escrow in Iraq, and this sanctions waiver allows Iran to access the cash. Now, the administration's position is that this is money that will only be used for humanitarian purchases. It's in restricted accounts. But as we all know, and like you said, money is fungible. It was the same issue with the $6 billion ransom payment, and that's why the administration refroze it when they were under pressure in the wake of Hamas's attack. So this is even more than that $6 billion, and it's pretty much an exact same scenario with this money. And another thing that's worth pointing out, even though it's somewhat technical, but I think it's worth explaining to people that with this waiver, it was also issued by the Trump administration. However, the Trump administration had a narrowed version. The money, the payments, were kept in an escrow account inside Baghdad, right? The Biden administration brought in it. This money now, since July, when the Biden administration updated the waiver, this money can now move outside of Iraq to Oman and European countries and actually be converted into euros so Iran can more easily make purchases with it.
You know, Adam, staying with the Biden administration making head-scratching policy decisions related that unfortunately have some links to terrorism. I mean, I think it's interesting when we consider the October 7th attacks by Hamas, how it seemed like there was a huge intelligence failure. You know, you might say that on the Israeli side, but also how did American intelligence not find this out? And it's interesting, we've got this piece here talking about the shift in the Biden administration's focus on, frankly, just intelligence to some of the more woke agenda items, like focusing on climate change. Can you talk to us about what you're seeing and how is Congress interested in understanding what's going on in the Biden administration and maybe holding someone accountable?
Yeah, you're right about that, and Congress is very interested in this. And look, in the days following the October 7th attack by Hamas, the White House, actually surprisingly for them, were quite earnest in admitting that this was a massive intelligence failure, not just on the Israeli side, but on the American side. We're supposed to be following this stuff as well, being able to give Israel the heads up. We have a lot of intelligence sharing programs with them, and this would certainly fall into that jurisdiction. But something very interesting happened with the Biden administration, and something very specific to the Biden administration when it took office. When they got in there, they started to put a very big priority on climate change, not just with appointing John Kerry, but also rejiggering U.S. intelligence to focus on climate change. That included appointing a climate scientist for the first time, a Brown University climate scientist for the first time to the president's Intelligence Advisory Board. And this person, according to the White House, was specifically tasked with not just adjusting the intelligence the president sees to have a focus on climate, but also policing the board to make sure that in their intelligence gathering and analysis capabilities, they're focusing on climate. This is something that also took place at the Pentagon as well when they shifted their focus to climate.
We're speaking with Adam Kredo over at the Washington Free Beacon. You also had a story here that I find mind-boggling. You know, everybody after the October 7th terror attack said, where was the intelligence community? Not just Mossad, the highly rated Israeli intelligence, but also American intelligence. We're supposed to be listening for things like this and watching behaviors to have some sort of inclination if a terror attack is being plotted. And it turns out, based on your reporting, that a lot of the resources in Joe Biden's intelligence community has been diverted from doing just that, and instead they're focusing on climate change. That's a Babylon Bee headline, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right that in many ways it does sound like that, but in fact it is true. I mean, and the data points are there. It's not just the executive branch, like we said. It's also the Pentagon. In 2021, right after Biden entered office, the Pentagon was putting out reports and saying, quite clearly that we need to put a focus on climate change and battling that as a key national security issue. So this is a wholesale approach by the government to focus and dump resources into battling things like climate change, things that critics say are woke priorities, while shifting away from the more classic intelligence gathering capabilities, which are things like tracking terrorists, tracking what Hamas is doing, and the types of things that would help us detect a plot like this before it happens.
But quickly, help me out. What exactly is the intelligence community? What is the CIA's role, or the National Security Administration, or military intelligence? What's their role in climate change? I mean, are there some sort of carbon emission secret camps out there or something that we're supposed to be finding?
From their perspective, I mean, if we're putting ourselves in their shoes very briefly, they see climate change, the environmental impact of it, as a dire national security issue because it's affecting populations in various countries where this is, in their perspective, in overdrive, and they see it as an issue that could actually impact the way various nations behave in terms of their defense. I think that they're also seeing that in terms of, the way that their missiles and other weapons might have an impact on climate as well. And, we laugh at it because it is quite laughable. The intelligence community's classic role is also its most important role, and that's detecting things like Hamas trying to slaughter Jews.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a quaint notion. Thanks, Adam. Get back to work
Adam.
now.
Always.
Now, time for you to win an award there at Free Beacon. Let's go.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I mean, honestly, what better award than being a
great
regular
reporting
on O'Connor and Company, though? That's honestly more reward in and of
True.
itself. It's 7:15. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the 5s with Jamie Witt in the 17.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
A ton of news broke today. I've got the up-to-the-minute details for you on the next Vince Colonnese Show, 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
All right. And Navy football in Annapolis this weekend. There's a lot of football going on this weekend.
It's a football weekend.
Patrice Onwuka, it's time for Critter News now.
All right.
And boy, you'd think that the top story on anyone's mind, this broke during the show yesterday, and honestly, we usually deliver breaking news as it happens during the
morning
O'Connor Company program. But this one I saw and said, oh, okay, great. And then we just moved on. But then everyone just went nuts with it all day, so I guess we have to revisit it. Guess what, everybody? China's going to give us a panda again. Or, well, more accurately, loan us a panda.
Well, what about the two that were two U.S. citizen pandas born here in our zoo, in the National Zoo? That
the anchor baby pandas?
The anchor baby pandas that China took back. Can we say kidnapped? I mean, took back.
No, we had to give them back. That was part of the agreement going all the way back to the 70s. So we have no pandas now, but Xi Jinping, even though, on the agenda in San Francisco this week should have been coming clean on COVID-19 and being held accountable for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans, if not millions worldwide.
Theft of intellectual property,
humanitarian atrocities, including the imprisonment of the Uyghurs and the attempted ethnic cleansing of the Uyghur population in China, slave labor camps, oppression, all those things. All of that apparently is forgiven, wiped off the slate because Xi Jinping said he's going to lend us a panda again.
Now, listen. Okay, obviously we're being facetious here, but
only a little.
If part of that agreement was that panda can be a panda farmhouse and just push out pandas, make a bunch of pandas that we can send 50 a panda for every state, then okay, that might be something that came out of his trip to the United States. That might be.
Why must they corner the market on pandas?
Thank you.
I mean, if these pandas come here and they breed, and God knows we spend a ton of money making those little, bald little pink hamsters grow into a full-blown panda bear. Have you seen the resources that are expended to keep those things alive? Because the pandas are so stupid that they'll roll over on them and crush their own child.
And lazy,
so we protect them, and we should be able to keep them.
This should be a money-making opportunity for the United States, right? Why, if we're going to have to give this panda back in whatever number of years, we got to get something out of the deal.
That's right.
We need a commander-in-chief who's going to negotiate that kind of deal.
We should be able to make big money off these pandas.
Yes.
I'm thinking skin them for panda coats and jackets
well,
and scarves.
I'm not going to go that far.
I'm thinking ground panda beef burgers.
No.
Who wouldn't want a double panda burger?
No,
with cheese.
No.
Panda steaks, a little panda filet mignon. What?
No. We just want to breed them and then create
for
just
profit.
Our own. Yeah,
the
profit
for fur,
isn't
for
breeding
blankets.
them.
I want a panda rug in my living room with the head
That's getting creepy.
Like that.
That's
No, this is going to be great. And the meat is tender because they literally do nothing.
That means it's fatty. That's not tender. That's fatty.
It's like Kobe beef, man. I mean, I'm telling you, these pandas, they all eat nothing but eucalyptus and they get massaged all day.
Here's the thing. I was at the National Zoo the last weekend when you could see the pandas. I caught a glimpse of one of their rumps as they were going back inside. The place was mobbed with people. I mean, kids were pressed up against the iron gates trying to get a glimpse of these pandas. Yeah. So I think you're right. There are people who would want to have skinned panda, who would eat the meat, who would do all of that. I'm just saying, let's breed the panda that's here and keep the pandas. Every panda born on U.S. soil should, if we're giving out, if they're going to be anchor babies, then we're going to keep them.
It's true.
That's how we should do it.
The Chinese people demand that of their anchor babies. If a Chinese human being comes to this country illegally and they have a baby, that baby is an American. That baby stays here. So if that's going to be the law, then the same should be true with a panda. 100% agree with you.
I'm okay with that.
Also, Comfortably Smug on Twitter. That's his alias as long as Nikki Haley stays out of the White House. Comfortably Smug says that why don't we just start cloning these things? We have the technology. We forget about breeding them. We can take their DNA, draw some stem cells from them. No one's going to know, and then we can breed our own pandas in a petri dish.
Have you not seen Jurassic Park?
I don't
1, 2, and 3. It never works out. You try and breed. No, let us not. Not clone. Sorry, we're not cloning. Breeding is fine. Breeding
Wait,
is
are
fine.
you telling me that these pandas are going to start marauding around our city streets
Eating people?
and terrorizing people? Yeah, I think that's the only worry about Jurassic Park is that it was dinosaurs. All right. Which should not necessarily make a comeback, but pandas...
Messing with nature. Breeding is not messing with nature. Cloning is messing with nature.
No, the way I do it, it is. It's 7:23 on O'Connor and Company.
Now,
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
We're here. It's 7:37. It's O'Connor and Company this Friday. In the nation's capital at 8:15, Julie Donaldson on the Commanders game against the Giants, and then at 8:35, Brett Baer from Fox News Channel. I'm Larry O'Connor. All morning long with us is Candace. God.
Oh, Larry, please.
Streisand Wuka. I'm sorry. I was just reading a story about the Candace Owens.
Okay, I am not Candace Owens. I have been a conservative long before she ever thought about it. So I forgive you, though, Larry.
Oh, it's such a Friday.
It's a Friday. All sins are forgiven. That's okay.
Why don't you just take this? Introduce
All right.
Phil Wegmann, please.
We have got our buddy, Phil Wegmann, White House reporter at RealClearPolitics, who we love and who we know love us.
Yes.
Hi, Phil.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Well, let me kick it off, Larry, if that's
Yes,
all right.
please.
While you collect yourself. So we were talking earlier about the TikTok, viral TikTok story with young people reading the Osama bin Laden report. And now you covered recently that the White House actually had to release a statement. Can you talk to us about that statement? And also, how is the White House dealing with being pushed into the corner on so many of these issues where they're kind of sounding like conservatives, or at least common sense people, on issues like terrorism and not supporting Osama bin Laden?
Mm-hmm. Certainly, no one expected this administration or any administration to have to put out a statement saying that Osama bin Laden, the terrorist who was brought to justice a dozen years ago, was a murderous thug who killed 3,000 Americans. This is not the sort of thing that you would expect any administration to have to revisit, but because of this viral moment, when you have younger Americans taking seriously his 2002 argument about how not just the American government, but American citizens are culpable for what that terrorist saw as crimes. The administration they took a moment and they addressed this. They squashed this. They said this was unacceptable. It was unusual, but I think it was something that they had to do just because they wanted to get ahead of this and they wanted to make clear that some things are beyond the pale.
Well, and Phil, I mean, listen, these are kids who have come out of the educational system that this administration supports and celebrates and wants to expand, frankly. This is the kind of education people are getting, sadly, if their parents aren't involved. But also, it's the kind of thing that goes viral because of the insidious nature of the algorithms of TikTok, which is controlled by the Chinese government. So if Joe Biden really wanted to do something about this, he could have put pressure on Xi Jinping and gotten some concessions with regard to their control over TikTok. Did anything come out of this meeting in San Francisco other than us getting a panda on loan?
Certainly, I haven't seen any reporting about TikTok coming out of this meeting, but it's an important issue because, as you referenced, that TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, they are a Chinese-owned subsidiary. There are very serious questions about what kind of influence the Chinese Communist Party has over that app. And these are not just conservative warnings. You have the current chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee saying that this is a danger, and this letter that kids seem to be resurfacing now certainly raises that point. But to the meeting, I think the big takeaway here from this meeting is that it actually happened. Mm-hmm. That Biden and President Xi sat down. That the Chinese seem to try to rewarm relations. There's talk that the two agreed that there would be high-level military discussions to avoid things going off the rail, that there would be cooperation on tackling the fentanyl trade.
Yeah.
But let's not kid ourselves. Tensions still remain incredibly high,
Yeah.
regardless of whether or not those pandas come back to the United States.
Well, and speaking of tensions, I mean, President Biden took a question about whether Xi Jinping is a dictator, and he said absolutely. And you see this viral clip of Anthony Blinken, like, oh my gosh, shuddering. What do you think you're going to hear anything? Is there a press conference scheduled for today, or do you think the White House is going to do any cleanup on that?
I don't think that they can walk that one back.
Yeah.
Biden has been definitive. Certainly, he wanted to welcome Xi back to the negotiation table, but this is not the first time that he has called his counterpart in China a dictator. And, more than that, there's actually substance here in the deals that he has made with Australia and the United Kingdom in the region, with some of the military spending that is going directly to Taiwan. So there were some smiles around the negotiation table, but as you mentioned, Patrice, I mean, he called him a dictator and made clear that the conversation was nice, but they expect China to actually deliver on some of these, some of these early vows as this continues to be a process.
I mean, he is a dictator. It's kind of funny to see Anthony Blinken. It was like, oh, look at Anthony Blinken reacting with that. Anthony Blinken's upset because, we're not supposed to tell the truth when we're diplomats. We're not actually supposed to say reality. So you also had this fascinating, flipping back away from the Biden administration into the Republican field of candidates. Chris Christie is calling the 2024 field of Republican candidates fundamentally unserious. Now, Phil, correct me if I'm wrong. This is a guy who, when he came into the campaign, said that his only reason for being there is to stop Donald Trump, right? I mean, how serious can that be if your only reason is to stop another candidate instead of actually promote your ideas and your agenda?
So I think that criticism of Christie is fair. After all, this is someone who was a longtime friend of the former president. He was an advisor of the former president immediately after the 2020 election and after January 6th. He was still in touch with Donald Trump. He has soured on him, right?
Yeah,
and
he calls him all the time saying, hey, how's that Christopher Wray doing? The guy I endorsed for FBI director? Let's not forget that.
And I think that, Republican primary voters, they have a long memory. They're paying attention to that sort of stuff. And so, this sort of public penance tour where he says that supporting Trump was a mistake, that might work to get him on Pod Save America, the podcast hosted by Obama administration alumni. It certainly makes for good television. But thus far, outside of New Hampshire, we have not seen that message has really taken off, and voters haven't responded to it.
Not so much. He is going to get a great contract with ABC News when all is said and done. Phil Wegmann, have a great Thanksgiving. You going home to visit Mom for Thanksgiving?
No, I'm sticking around. I'll be here with some family in D.C.
All right. Well,
Okay.
Do give Mom our best.
Thanks, Phil.
I will. Thank you.
It is 7:44 now on. I do love Barbra Streisand singing Christmas music. But it pretty much
Babs.
ends right there.
Babs
has said she's leaving the country.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if Donald Trump becomes president.
If we had $1 for every celebrity who said that, right?
She was on this week with Stephen Colbert, which, as our friend Stephen Miller on social media, a media critic, says, these late-night shows have basically become late-night group therapy for liberals. They just all get together and just,
and cry.
Lament. And Barbra Streisand said she can't live in this country if Donald Trump is reelected. I will move. I can't live in this country if he became president. Streisand said. My Barbra Streisand impersonation sounds eerily like my Bernie Sanders impersonation because they're pretty much the same person. And then Colbert said, well, where would you go? She said, England. I think I'll go to England. So there you go. Go to England. Cher, by the way, has also promised to leave the country, as you know, if Trump wins. And there's an internet rumor right now that Bruce Springsteen has also said that he will leave the country if Donald Trump wins. So I got to tell you, I mean, this is a campaign ad in the making. The geniuses over at the Trump campaign should literally, I'm not joking, they should put together a montage of all these insufferable jerks who love to lecture us about our politics and say Donald Trump's greatest achievement will be on day one when he is sworn in as president. These people will leave the country. How great will it be?
I think it would be fun to watch. I mean, here's the bottom line. When you are privileged and rich and don't have to, and have 5 people who buy your groceries, you have the luxury of saying, oh, things are awful now that President Biden is great now that President Biden is in office, and awful when President Trump was in office. But regular folks like us who go to the grocery store, who trade down, who are going to the dollar store just to make that paycheck last a little bit longer. Remember that under President Trump's leadership, inflation wasn't as high as it was then. And yes, it has moderated in the past a few months, but it is still 3 times higher than when President Biden took office. So, yeah, goodbye to the elites who want to leave, but I think regular folks would probably like to see things go back to the way they were before.
Yeah, anytime things are tough for Bruce Springsteen, all he has to do is announce a 4-week limited run in a Broadway theater where he's going to give a private concert for 1,000 people a night.
Yeah.
And he charges $500 a ticket, and and the only people who can afford it are his rich pals anyway. So basically, think about it for a minute. It's like, imagine if you hit tough times and you called all your friends and said, hey, give me a bunch of money and I'll sing songs for you, because that's what Bruce Springsteen does. That's what he does. He says, "Hey, I need some extra money. Okay, I'll go sing some songs for my rich friends, and they'll pay me to do it." And that's what he does. And you're right. It's you can afford to be a Democrat when other people are giving you a bunch of money to live a rich life. And somebody saw the posting on X.
Yeah.
Since I'm training myself not to say tweet on Twitter. Somebody saw the posting on X that said Bruce Springsteen will leave the country if Donald Trump will be president. And somebody replied and said, where have I heard this before? And I said, oh, yeah, it sounds familiar, just like 98% of all of Bruce Springsteen's songs. Honestly, I'm sorry. Bruce Springsteen brings nothing to the table in any way culturally in this nation. And Cher at least admits it. Cher said, if Trump wins this time, I will leave. In other words, you've already said this before.
Now she actually means
this time I really, really mean it.
Well,
so,
hey,
okay.
Go for it. Listen, I think people want a closed border. I think people want crime to go down. I think people are tired of the wokeism, infiltrating the country. Hey, if they love that stuff, then go to countries that will embrace it. But a lot of countries are closing their borders right
Trump
now.
wins the election, and on the first day when he's sworn in, Barbra Streisand leaves, Cher leaves, Bruce Springsteen leaves. You throw in Jussie Smollett, and you're immediately making America great again.